In 1951, a frozen monster clawed its way out of Arctic ice, and America's nightmares changed forever. The Thing from Another World wasn't just entertainment. It was a warning disguised as science fiction, a Cold War scream wrapped in Hollywood spectacle. And today, we're uncovering 20 shocking secrets about the film that redefined terror. Let's dig in. Number 1. The title that burns. The film opens with something no one had seen before. The word thing gradually burns through the screen, letter by letter, followed by From Another World in smaller letters beneath it. Audiences in 1951 had never seen anything like it. They watched those letters sear onto the screen and knew they were in for something special. This effect became so iconic that it transcended the film itself. When John Carpenter decided to remake The Thing in 1982, he specifically paid homage to this opening. The technical achievement was remarkable for its time. Creating the illusion of letters burning through required careful optical work and timing. In an era before computer graphics, every frame of that sequence was painstakingly crafted. And it worked. Audiences sat forward in their seats the moment those letters started smoking onto the screen, and they stayed there for the entire runtime. Number 2. The alien is actually a walking plant. Unlike the shape-shifting nightmare in the original 1938 novella Who Goes There? By John W. This movie's creature is depicted as something no one expected, a vegetation-based life form. That's right. The monster terrorizing this Arctic research station is essentially an intelligent plant. But don't let that fool you into thinking it's harmless. This thing feeds on blood, moves with terrifying speed, and is completely impervious to bullets. The military fires round after round into it with absolutely no effect. But it does have 2 fatal weaknesses: fire and electricity. This creative choice was a massive departure from the source material, where the alien could mimic any living creature it consumed. The filmmakers simplified the concept, but in doing so, they gave the film its own unique identity in sci-fi history. Plus, the idea of a blood-drinking plant added a layer of biological horror that felt disturbingly plausible in the atomic age. Enjoying these facts? Hit that subscribe button for more forgotten film history. Number 3. One of Hollywood's first full-body fire stunts. The climactic scene where the creature is drenched in kerosene and set ablaze wasn't just movie magic. It was genuinely life-threatening. This sequence was reportedly one of Hollywood's earliest full-body fire stunts, pushing the boundaries of what stunt performers were willing to do on camera in 1951. Think about that for a moment. This was decades before modern fire-resistant suits and sophisticated safety protocols. Stuntmen literally allowed themselves to be set on fire to create that unforgettable moment of a burning alien staggering through the Arctic station, arms flailing, emitting an otherworldly shriek. The flames were real, the danger was real, and the terror on the actors' faces? Some of that was probably genuine. Number 4. Who really directed this thing? The credits say Christian Nyby directed this film. But here's the truth that's been whispered in Hollywood circles for over 70 years. Producer and legendary director Howard Hawks essentially directed most of the film himself. Nyby, who was Hawks's longtime film editor, received the directorial credit primarily to fulfill Directors Guild membership requirements and to launch his own directing career. But cast members, crew, and film historians have consistently pointed to Hawks as the true creative force behind the camera. Hawks's fingerprints are all over this movie. So why the deception? In Hollywood's studio system, favors were currency. Hawks was helping out a loyal collaborator while maintaining plausible deniability. To this day, the film remains credited to Nyby, but cinema historians universally recognize it as a Howard Hawks production in everything but name. Number 5. They bought cinema history for the price of a used car. In 1950, Howard Hawks and his production team purchased the film rights to John W.'s influential 1938 novella for the grand sum of $1,250. To put that in perspective, that's roughly equivalent to about $14,000 today. For a story that would spawn not 1 but 2 classic science fiction films, launch countless imitators, and become one of the most influential sci-fi concepts in cinema history, that's an absolute steal. Campbell's novella had been a cornerstone of science fiction literature for over a decade, but in 1950, science fiction was still considered a niche genre, not the box office goldmine it would become. Hawks recognized the cinematic potential in Campbell's story and snapped up the rights for pocket change. That tiny investment would pay off massively. Number 6. They actually filmed inside a freezer plant. Creating a convincing Arctic research station in sunny Los Angeles presented some serious challenges. The solution? The production team built their interior sets inside an actual Los Angeles ice storage plant. Cast and crew worked in genuinely frigid conditions. Actors performed in heavy parkas and winter gear not just for authenticity, but for actual survival in the freezing environment. The cold wasn't simulated, it was brutally real. You can see it in every frame, the way actors move stiffly, how they huddle together for warmth, the authentic shivers and discomfort. Method acting before method acting was cool. This commitment to practical locations gave the film a tactile reality that no soundstage with fake snow could replicate. Modern viewers watching the film can still feel that bone-deep cold radiating from the screen. Number 7. Made by Hawke's own personal production company. The Thing from Another World was produced by Winchester Pictures Corporation, and here's the charming detail. Winchester was Howard Hawks' middle name. Hawks created this production company to maintain creative control over his projects, free from studio interference. And this film was one of only 2 movies ever made under the Winchester Pictures banner, making it an incredibly rare piece of Hollywood history. The other film was The Big Sky, a Western released the following year in 1952. Number 8. A novelty song almost ruined everything. Originally, the film was simply going to be called The Thing. Clean, simple, terrifying, but then disaster struck in the form of a novelty song. In 1950, comedian Phil Harris released The Thing, a goofy comic song about finding a mysterious box on the beach. The song became a massive hit, reaching number 1 on the charts and dominating radio airwaves. Suddenly, the word thing was associated with comedy rather than horror. The solution? Expand the title to The Thing from Another World, which added specificity and gravitas, while distancing the film from Harris's comedic ditty. It was a last-minute change that actually improved the title, giving it a pulp science fiction flavor that perfectly captured the era's atomic age paranoia. Crisis averted, and arguably, the film ended up with a more evocative title because of it. Number 9. The budget-to-impact ratio was absolutely insane. For a 1951 science fiction film, working with modest resources, The Thing from Another World delivered an intense sequence of special effects, dangerous stunts, and elaborate set dressing that made it stand head and shoulders above typical B-movies of the era. The budget wasn't enormous by Hollywood standards, but every dollar was strategically deployed for maximum impact. The full-body fire stunt, the ice storage plant location, the creature costume and makeup, the elaborate Arctic station, sets all of these elements combined to create a film that looked and felt far more expensive than it actually was. Number 10. It crushed the competition at the box office. By the end of 1951, The Thing from Another World had earned approximately $1,950,000 in domestic rentals. That made it the 46th highest-earning film of the year. Not bad for a science fiction thriller released by an independent production company. But here's the real victory. It beat virtually every other major science fiction release of the year. While other sci-fi films struggled to find audiences beyond hardcore genre fans, The Thing broke through to mainstream success. It played in first-run theaters, not just the second-run houses where genre films usually ended up. Critics took it seriously. Audiences kept coming back. The film's success proved that science fiction could be both commercially viable and artistically respectable, paving the way for the sci-fi boom that would follow throughout the 1950s. That box office performance wasn't just about money, it was validation that genre filmmaking could compete with Hollywood's prestige pictures. Number 11. It's really about the Soviet threat. On the surface, The Thing from Another World is about an alien monster, but scratch that surface just a little, and you'll find something far more interesting. The film is a Cold War allegory dressed in science fiction clothing. Released in 1951, the film tapped into America's deepest fears about the unknown threat from beyond. The alien creature arriving from the sky mirrors concerns about Soviet missiles and invasion. The remote Arctic outpost represents America's distant early warning stations in Alaska and Greenland, standing vigilant against surprise attack. Even the creature itself, something that looks human but operates on completely alien logic, impossible to reason with or understand, echoes propaganda depictions of communist infiltrators. The film never explicitly mentions communism or the Cold War, but it didn't have to. 1951 audiences understood exactly what they were watching. Number 12. They moved the entire story thousands of miles. Here's a fascinating creative choice that often goes unnoticed. although John W. original novella is set in Antarctica at the South Pole. The film moves the entire story to the Arctic, specifically the North Pole region, and reimagines the setting as a United States Air Force base. Why make this change? Several practical and thematic reasons. First, the Arctic was more closely associated with American military operations in 1951, making it feel more immediate and relevant to audiences. The DEW line radar stations across Alaska, Canada, and Greenland were front-page news during the Cold War. Second, Antarctica was largely unexplored and exotic in 1951, which would have distanced the story from contemporary anxieties. By placing the action in the Arctic, the filmmakers made the threat feel closer. Number 13. Marshall Dillon was the monster. Terrorizing the Arctic Research Station is portrayed by actor James Arness, and for most viewers in 1951, this was their introduction to an actor who would become a television legend. Just 4 years after The Thing, Arness would be cast as Marshal Matt Dillon in the TV western Gunsmoke, a role he would play for an astonishing 20 years from 1955 to 1975. Gunsmoke became one of the longest-running and most beloved shows in television history, and Arness became an American icon as the tough but fair lawman. Number 14. The credits appear at the end. In an unusual move for the era, The Thing from Another World doesn't show cast credits during the opening titles. Instead, the film begins with that iconic slow-burning letters graphic and then jumps straight into the story. All the cast and crew credits appear at the end of the film. This was a bold structural choice in 1951, but the filmmakers understood something crucial. Credits kill momentum. They wanted audiences plunged immediately into the story without any delay, without any buffer between the ominous burning title and the narrative itself. The credits could wait. The suspense could not. This approach would become more common in later decades, but in 1951 it was genuinely innovative. Number 15. The fire stunt was filmed under maximum security. Remember that dangerous full-body fire stunt we mentioned earlier? Here's how paranoid the production was about safety and secrecy during filming. The sequence was shot MOS, that's Hollywood terminology for filming without sound, derived from early German directors saying mid-out sound. It took place on RKO Stage 7 with absolutely no visitors allowed. The set was locked down like a military operation. Multiple stuntmen were on standby, fire extinguishers positioned strategically, medical personnel standing by. The danger was so extreme that the production couldn't risk any distractions or complications. Even studio executives were kept away. The actor in the creature suit would be covered in flammable liquid and actually set on fire, with only seconds to complete the shot before the flames became uncontrollable. The fact that they pulled it off without incident is a testament to the professionalism and courage of everyone involved. Modern safety regulations would never allow such a stunt today, making this footage even more remarkable. Number 16. The Library of Congress said it's important. In 2001, exactly 50 years after its release, The Thing from Another World was selected by the United States Library of Congress for preservation in the National Film Registry. This is one of the highest honors a film can receive in the United States, reserved for movies deemed culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. Each year, the Library of Congress selects only 25 films. The Thing earned its place alongside acknowledged masterpieces because it represents a crucial moment in the evolution of science fiction cinema when the genre transitioned from cheap serials and mad scientist melodramas to serious, socially relevant filmmaking. The film has been carefully restored and archived, ensuring that the burning letters and Arctic terror will continue to frighten and fascinate audiences for centuries to come. Number 17. It's less faithful to the source than the remake. Here's a comparison that reveals just how much the 1951 film diverged from its source material. When John Carpenter made his 1982 version of The Thing, he went back to John W. original novella and restored elements that the original film had abandoned. The shape-shifting alien that could perfectly imitate any living creature? That's in Campbell's story and in Carpenter's film, but completely absent from the original version. The original version essentially took Campbell's premise, alien discovered in ice at a remote polar research station, and built an entirely different story around it. Number 18. They actually went to Glacier National Park. While the interior scenes were filmed in that Los Angeles ice storage plant, the production also committed to authentic location shooting for exterior sequences. Some of the outdoor ice and wilderness scenes were filmed on location in Glacier National Park, Montana. Those sweeping shots of endless ice fields, the distant mountains, the characters trudging through genuine snow under gray skies, that's all real. The Montana location shooting gave the film a sense of genuine isolation and environmental threat that soundstage work could never replicate. Number 19. It's still actually scary. Here's something that separates The Thing from Another World from 99% of 1950s science fiction films. It remains genuinely frightening to modern audiences. Most sci-fi films from that era have become camp classics, enjoyable for their nostalgic charm but not actually scary. The Thing is different. The slow burn pacing, the building paranoia, the claustrophobic Arctic setting, these elements create an atmosphere that transcends the film's age. 70 years after its release, The Thing from Another World can still make audiences jump and afraid of what might be lurking in the shadows. Number 20. It inspired generations of filmmakers. The influence of The Thing from Another World on science fiction and horror cinema cannot be overstated. The isolated setting with a small group facing an unstoppable threat became a fundamental structure for horror films. The tension between military pragmatism and scientific curiosity drives everything from Alien to Jurassic Park. Directors like John Carpenter, Ridley Scott, and James Cameron have all acknowledged The Thing's influence on their work. The Thing proved that science fiction could be artistically ambitious, commercially successful, and genuinely scary all at once. The Thing from Another World proved that sci-fi could be smart, scary, and culturally significant all at once. If you're obsessed with retro cinema like I am, hit that subscribe button for more forgotten film facts.